Dan Rubenstein, it's been a week. It's going to be a week here in college football week 9. We've got a lot to discuss. We're going to get through all of course, the biggest games of the week, give you our picks, give you our plays, give you our fantasy things, give you a weather report. And of course, we're going to start at the top momentarily with all things Michigan and sign stealing, sort of the news of the day, of the week, of the year here in the wide world of college football. How are you?
I'm terrific, Ty. I am great. I am excited to talk about this. I'm going to call it, you ready? Spooktacular Saturday, Ty.
Oh, it's not that creative. You've had better.
I know. Well, originally it was going to be Soil Your Pants Saturday, both in reference to how my stomach is feeling and with, what did you say it was? 7 of the 9 unbeaten teams are on the road?
Yep.
So there is something there. It's your preference. It's dealer's choice if it's a Soil Your Pants Saturday or a Spooktacular Saturday. And I guess there's something spooky about soiling your pants. I'm not going to stay hung up on this particular activity, but Ty, I think we got a great week ahead.
We do. We should start with the news, though, if you're cool with that.
I am.
We have breaking news!
Beep, beep, huh? Right? Boop, 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 boop.
So, what the hell is going on at Michigan? Here is the synopsis.
Good question.
There's an investigation currently underway as to whether or not a Michigan staffer, a guy by the name of Connor Stallions.
Good name.
Very good name.
Yeah.
By extension, the coaching staff violated a rule around in-person scouting. The NCAA has banned it, mostly because of budgetary reasons. Not everybody has the travel budget, right?
Right. It's been around since I think the 90s that the rule has existed because it seems, you're right, a travel reason, a resource reason, that it's costly to scout a bunch of teams all of the time.
Right. So the allegations here are that Mr. Stallions was either going to or arranging for others to go to games around the country, not just Big Ten games, right? Basically to record signals on mobile phones. And there have been pictures that have popped up on message boards and all sorts of stories now. Of course, this is a college football thing, so it has ballooned somewhat out of control. But in effect, sending people to games, recording on a mobile phone, the sidelines throughout the course of the game, presumably then feeding them back to him or somebody on the staff so that they could decode them.
Stabs, I believe, is the word you were looking for.
Stabs, thank you. So they could decode them. Yeah. And so when it comes time to play a particular opponent, they've got some info as to what plays they might be calling. Many videos making the rounds on social media of this guy, Connor Stallions, being on the sidelines, pointing to the sky in a Michigan-Ohio State game.
Well, it was pointing to the sky with a number of other players and coaches and staffers on the sideline, indicating to the Michigan defense after a look, hurry up and look at me kind of moment for Ohio State, getting a hand signal in to adjust a play, and Michigan immediately decoding said play.
Allegedly. So there are many, many, many opinions on this. For my money, I've told this to you and many others, this is the perfect college football story. It really just brings together all the things that we like about college football, whether it's message boards or crazy rumors or a fiery rivalry with Michigan, Ohio State, really all the things kind of packed together into one nice little package. I have many thoughts on this as a former sign stealer myself.
A safety, a middle linebacker, a Big Ten middle linebacker? Is that where you were?
As a backup infielder my junior year while I waited behind the coach's kid on the varsity baseball team.
Yeah.
So I have clearly qualified thoughts. Where are you
Obviously. Where am I at? Okay. I love the story just like you do, especially because now there are rumors swirling. It was an inside leak to, Pete Thamel was the one who I think was the biggest newsbreaker in this situation. And he was the one who was able to identify a name and identify sort of the architecture of the scheme and, sending people out with phones to different games. And now you're seeing reports, it's essentially coast to coast. And we saw Andy Staples bring up, I think it was VolQuest, the Tennessee message board, that had a poster way back in December saying that he knew or she knew somebody that was hired by Michigan to go to Tennessee games to shoot hand signals with a phone. And so it is, one, seemingly pretty elaborate, right? Two, it is the only current full-on operation on this scale that we know of. And I'm positive Michigan fans to the person are saying everybody does it. It's going to blow over. And I've seen some takes where it's like, well, look, the hand signals are out in the open for anybody to see. And also true. And also true that in every single game, everybody's trying to decode signals live to pull a tie, as all of the college football coaches have been saying in their press conferences. I guess that would be in reference to you getting Munson out in the middle of backup infielderdom.
That's right. Thank you.
But the conclusion that I've come to is, like, obviously Michigan is trying to decipher in the way that everybody's trying to decipher, but the operation status, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me upset. I appreciate when teams look for an edge in every single possible way because there's a lot of money on the line. There's a lot of pride on the line. There's a lot of everything on the line with major college football. But there is also that element, and I don't mean to sit on the fence here because ultimately I guess I'm going to come to a conclusion, but there is that element here where it feels kind of competitively antithetical, where like everybody hopes, every fan hopes that like their coaches are, deep in the film room, coming up with the perfect scheme, teaching it to the players, practicing it with the players, and they're just better at preparing in an organic way than the other team is. And so if there's any sort of doubt cast upon your team's ability to win mano a mano, head up, you bring your best dudes, we bring our best dudes, we game plan, you game plan, let's see who wins. If there's any doubt cast on that ability, it's kind of a shame to be a Michigan fan, right? That now everybody's going to look at it. So if we're going to cast doubt on Michigan's ability to play mano a mano, even if this is common, this is the only operation we have evidence of and know of in this moment. So for that, I think it's a loss for college football and a loss for Michigan. And so I'm fully prepared for more evidence of more operations to come out. I can't wait to find out if it was an inside job, if it was,
that's what I'm waiting for.
That's what I'm waiting for. An anti-Harbaugh person within the administration or a former coach. We've had some coaches leave in murky circumstances and with reported bad blood. I can't wait to find out more information about this story. But yeah, I think it's at absolute best a pretty terrible look for Michigan the more they win.
Well, all right. So the rule in question is around in-person scouting, and they banned it for budgetary reasons. For all intents and purposes, it's kind of unenforceable. Unless you're really careless, it's pretty much unenforceable. So it doesn't bother me that Michigan tried. It wouldn't surprise me if other schools around the country are also trying.
Yeah.
When you say elaborate, though, I recoil a little bit because this wasn't elaborate. A bank heist is elaborate.
Right. Well, and this is not Michigan bugging
No.
rooms within the facility. This is not Michigan, setting up secret cameras within an indoor practice facility. It's not that level.
It was elaborate to the extent that it was somewhat thorough, and they were going to Tennessee games, Oregon games, whatever games to try and make sure that they were complete and that they had everybody kind of
all their bases
charted.
covered. Yeah.
Right. All the bases covered. Thank you. So to that end, I don't blame Michigan for trying, especially if the rule is unenforceable. It would surprise me if it's not something going on elsewhere around college football. As you said, the real kicker is how the guy get caught, right? He was using his real name to buy tickets. That probably confirmed it, but ultimately they're not catching the guy unless somebody tips off the authorities. That's the story I want to read. That's what I'm very, very curious about.
Yeah. Now, I think there have definitely been instances within this sport, though, that I've talked about it. I think it was 2 years ago when I've mentioned this again, with Brent Venables, who has this reputation.
Yeah.
And we've seen what has happened since Clemson lost Brent Venables. And I think it was the Pitt game where they went up 31-0 in the blink of like a quick toilet run. And I think it can make a significant difference.
Well, and that's my next point, because I've seen a lot of hand waving out there regarding the competitive advantage of this.
Yeah.
A lot of, like knowing the signals is one thing, but then stopping the play is another. And
sure,
that's very true. There is no doubt about that. Like the video that we referenced earlier going around on social media, the Michigan sidelines, everybody's pointing up, and Ohio State scored a touchdown on that play. It didn't stop it. So a lot of folks are like, see, it didn't matter anyway. And let me harken back to the baseball sign stealing days if I could.
Yeah.
All right. If you know a guy is stealing there's no guarantee, especially in the high school ranks, that you're going to throw him
The
out.
catcher's good enough to throw him out, yeah.
There's no guarantee. But what it does give you is a little bit more information, and you know not to throw a curveball. Or if the guy's going to bunt, you know to throw a high fastball, make it harder to do so. It is not always about getting it exactly right. It is about having a little bit more information to give you something of an edge. So in football sense, maybe it means you're not playing a run when you know a pass is coming. You don't know what pass is coming.
You see James Franklin talk about this?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, where he would talk about they would have a shot play called on a short yardage situation that he would consider to be unpredictable. Whole different conversation about James Franklin's ability to...
Whole different thing.
Whole different thing. But yes, the coaches that have commented on it have very specifically said it is meaningful.
It is meaningful. It does offer more information. And I think in that offers something of an advantage. That is not to say that you are getting it 100% right all of the time.
Right.
But football is decided by moments. It is decided by these key plays, these big explosion plays, turnovers. Having a little bit of extra information can give you that edge. And so in that sense, yeah, I think it does offer something of an advantage, but everybody is trying to decode them in real time. And that's sort of the other point, because I've seen a lot of folks chime in with, well, then, like, if they knew it was happening, if it was common knowledge, why didn't they just change the signals? Do you think this guy is going to be on the sidelines just hanging out if his play sheet doesn't work? Do you think he's not good enough to just sort of look on the other side and figure out what the new ones are after a quarter?
By the way, he was standing like 4 feet away from Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh.
So I think it's foolish to assume that just because this guy was there and he had this operation going on the side, that he is also not good. I'm assuming he's getting the videos and figuring out the signs. If he knows what the signs aren't, it should make it easier to figure out in the game what they are. So I just think that, like, he's not hacking the matrix. I think he's probably good enough to be the sign stealer, whether it's from video, whether it's on the sidelines in game, which, by the way, isn't really that illegal, and everybody kind of does it.
I weirdly, by the way, fully believe Jim Harbaugh had no concept that it was happening. I fully believe that in an operation this widespread, that there would be like a very keen focus on plausible deniability. And I think that was in the Tennessee message board post, whatever credibility you want to give that like Harbaugh had no concept it was happening.
That's fine, but the rule, the way it is written, presumes that he knows.
Right. Yeah, of course. It's
and so
control over a program.
Whether or not Jim Harbaugh did or didn't know is almost irrelevant, because it's against the rules. That they find that this thing was happening within his program, then he's going to be on the hook for it. And that's where I think things are right now. Like, we are waiting to have more reporting out there from Pete Thamel and others, and message board geniuses on Twitter and folks on Reddit who, you know, obviously care about this stuff a great deal. More and more information is going to trickle out. And at some point, the Big Ten is going to decide it wants its pound of flesh. And when that happens, I think all bets are off, because that's when this story goes to an entirely different stratosphere. There's already been smoke around, well, maybe the Big Ten will ban them from the postseason. No.
First of all, I think you have 90 days to respond to a notice of allegations, right? Something like that.
But that's from the NCAA. This is
right
on the conference level.
On the Big Ten level, sure.
On the conference level, something that can be enacted much quicker. I just feel like that is where the story is going next. Tony Petitti, the new commissioner for the Big Ten, has a certain amount of exclusive authority that he can exercise if he decides that, you know, these rules have been violated in a way that violates competitive balance and integrity of the game, sanctity and all that stuff. So I think that's where this is going next, and we will obviously talk about it when it gets there. But this is still very early days, and I suspect that the more information that comes out, if we start seeing videos, if we the Big Ten is going to feel compelled to do something, whether you agree with that or not. And that's when this is going to get truly controversial. What we're seeing now is fun and games, but once they start trying to actually enact punishment,
right,
this is going to go haywire.
My final thought in terms of punishment is the Big Ten is whatever the NCAA does eventually, who knows? When the Big Ten is going to look at discipline or no discipline or whatever in this situation, one, the rule is in a gray area. The rule does not stipulate scouting by using phones or other technology in the way I believe, maybe you know better than I, with baseball, right? With the Houston Astros and stuff, there are like specific things that are outlined in terms of recording devices. And I don't believe that's outlined in like the 90s rule that was written down because the concept of having a tiny little video camera when people were wearing backpacks with batteries in 1993 or whatever, it's just completely unthinkable. So the Big Ten, run by a TV executive, just having signed a new deal, is not going to suddenly want less Michigan in competitive spaces. And so, yeah, perhaps there will be a punishment, maybe some scholarships here and there, maybe something docked. I do not think, maybe there's another suspension for Harbaugh or some sort of slap on the wrist. It's just not the reality in which we live when television is running the sport, that they're going to take away one of the biggest actors in the country from your sitcom. Not going to happen.
Yep. Indeed. More to come on this story. As you know, we will do our best to cover it here. But that being said, it is week 9.
Yes.
We've got all sorts of picks we got to make. Dan, let's do it.
Dan, time, help. I need picks of the week.
Every week you can play in our Pick'em game out at verballers.com. We call it Run the Board. In week 9, we have a 15-game slate against the point spread, Dan. 15 games. This is your opportunity to jump in.
Yeah.
You got to sign up, though, at verballers.com. That's the only way you're eligible for prizes. You're also, of course, eligible for all the other stuff that we offer out on Patreon as well, like the ad-free episodes and the bonus content on Thursdays. We've got a Jeff video coming out on Thursday as well. So we offer all sorts of fun stuff, including great prizes. This week, Dan, a $100 gift card to...
You tell me.
This week, why don't we go back to the well and do home field again?
It's a great call. It's a great call.
We've given it out twice before, including one earlier this month. And we have gotten feedback from folks who just want the home field gift card because they make cool t-shirts. So we'll do it again.
We'll retro-inspired t-shirts. I love it.
$100 gift card.
And I think bomber jackets and sweatpants, anything you need
man.
to just lounge and watch Saturday football. Not a sponsor. I'm going to stop talking about them right now.
Not a sponsor, could be.
Yeah.
Run the Board is the name of the game. Go to playruntheboard.com or verballers.com if you're interested. Here is what we do. We give you 3 big dog games of the week. Then we build our quad, our ideal quad for the game watching experience across many different windows of games. We've got picks, we've got fantasy things, we've got all sorts of other things. Start with our first big dog. 3:30 on Fox. Biggest of all the big dogs this week. It is your Oregon Ducks. It is the Utah Utes. Oregon favored by 6.5, 7 points. Depends where you look. My question is, what is the point spread if Oregon punts it away and doesn't give the ball back to Michael Penix at midfield in that Washington game?
Yeah.
And
wins the game is what you're saying.
And wins the game.
Because Michael Penix did take the ball and go down the field quite quickly and would have after a punt, I'm positive. But, okay, so if Oregon's undefeated in this moment, Cam Rising declared out for the season, I think Utah is down their 2 best running backs, their 2 best tight ends, their best defensive end, their best linebacker. They're out a lot of dudes. So if it's 6.5 right now, I don't know, maybe 9 points the rest of the way if it goes the same way for Utah and Oregon after that moment. Yeah, something like that, 8 or 9 points.
Yeah, this line tells us, I think, that if the game were in Eugene, separate from the whole Washington result, if the game were in Eugene, the Ducks are favored by like 10 points, which is it's a big number. It was a close game last year, 20-17 when the game was in Eugene. Okay. I saw a clip this week from our friend Yogi Roth at Pac-12 Network.
Yep.
And he compared Utah, I thought, rather aptly to a biker gang.
He's been saying that, yeah.
The biker gang thing, which I love. He's basically saying they roll in and they just sort of take over. I don't fully know what that means.
Okay.
I really don't. But I love the idea of it. Kyle Whittingham certainly has the hair for it. I don't know if he's growing it out. Really thick, strong head of hair.
Looks great.
That comparison frightens me terribly because I think it's true. So I am worried that my initial read of Oregon minus whatever is going to fall by the wayside here because Utah is just a team that everybody always underestimates, and they find a way to win these games, or at least keep it close.
They seem to find a way to win these games at home, especially in Salt Lake, at altitude, whatever. And Rice Eccles can be I don't know, it can be pretty loud and energetic, electric. So the home field thing, speaking of home field, really makes sense in this case. Continue.
Allow me to be the friendly neighborhood Ute hater, though, if I could.
Please.
I think the plain, very obvious truth in this game is that Utah has not scored against average defenses this season.
Right.
What was it, 7 points against Oregon State?
7 points against Utah. I mean, the offense scored 7, and they had a pick 6. Yeah.
So, again, like you said, they're down 2
Did I say
running
Utah?
backs.
7 points against UCLA. Yeah.
7 points, right.
Yeah.
Down 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, wide receiver, a D-end, linebacker, Cam Rising for the season, as you said. They just have to play in such a specific way to win a game like this. I don't think they can play it against Oregon. I don't think they can play it against Oregon. The other thing is the defense. If you look at their numbers, defense has given up a lot of big plays, and they've worked around it thus far, but they can't do that forever. This is not the kind of stat that you can hide from all season long, especially against better teams like Oregon. So I think Oregon wins. I don't feel great about it. I'm not going to bet it, but I think Oregon wins something like 27-17. It's a low-scoring game. Are we going to do the live watch-along for this?
Yeah, I would love to watch it with everybody. If you guys want to come out, I think it'll just be on solidverballive.com, right? At 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific.
Okay.
So come on out and watch. Maybe we'll bring in a couple guests and do a watch-along on YouTube. I think that's reasonable to say. The big keys to me that scare me as an Oregon human is Bo Nix and this Oregon offense on the road after showing some struggle in those big moments against Washington, after showing some struggle in the passing game against Texas Tech. Obviously, a slow start against Stanford that they were able to then steamroll the Cardinal as the game wore on. But this hasn't been a machine on the road, and this is going to be their most difficult road battle, if not the most difficult game overall for the rest of the season, considering that USC and Oregon State are both at home in Autzen Stadium. So, no, I think the same things that I've been concerned about with Oregon, I think hold even more true against Utah. It's offensive line penalties. You can't turn 2nd and 8s into 2nd and 13s. It's going to be Bo Nix hitting open receivers and seeing open receivers on 3rd and 6, on 4th and 2, whatever, because I think those guys have been there. It's Will Stein calling the plays, calling executable, obvious 2-yard conversion plays in those 4th and 1 moments. That you have to have that arsenal of Excelsior. That's what I call my never fail package.
Never fail package. Yeah.
And then defensively, it's just guys making plays on the edge. I was talking to our friend Jeff Schwartz about it, and he was like, this is, Sione Vaki has energized this Utah offense, but USC played this team terribly. USC's front is small, and they tackle poorly, and they take bad lanes, and they get out of position. I think Oregon's a much more talented and much better coached defense. And so if Oregon's able to set an edge here, they should be able to get off the field on defense, because I'm not terribly worried about the secondary being gashed, and I'm not terribly worried about Utah doing something over and over successfully for 4 quarters, because Oregon has adjusted really well at halftime. We saw it against Washington. We saw it against Wazoo on defense. So I have Oregon winning relatively close, because I still think to win in Salt Lake City is just such a tall task. No. And, I never like picking against spread-wise a good defense at home as an underdog. So I have this as Utah covering, Oregon winning 23-17 Ducks.
Okay, we sort of agree. Let's get to our second big dog. Also at 3:30 on CBS, it is the Georgia Bulldogs minus 14.5, squaring off against Florida, formerly known as the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. They changed the name because of alcohol-related incidents a while ago.
I've had alcoholic beverages. I've had a great time, and it's still the cocktail party to me.
Still the cocktail party to me. Yeah. That's right. Story here is no Brock Bowers. The story is no Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is out for some period of time. He had what's called a tightrope procedure on his ankle. Fairly common procedure, kind of a miracle of science, but he's going to be out a few weeks while he recovers. Likely the remainder of the regular season, but we'll see about conference championships and whatnot. I went back and looked at how Bill Connolly's projections were doing relative to the Georgia offense. I was kind of surprised at what I saw.
Yeah.
Kind of caught me off guard. In 5 of Georgia's 7 games, the offense has been at least 4 points worse. The defense has been more stable, but also has undershot projections in like 5 of their 7 games as well. So that to me was telling. And I came into this with an initial impression of, well, it's Georgia against whoever, so I'm going to lay the number. Don't care if it's a rivalry or whatever. But then I started talking myself into the other side of this bet. Did you have similar conflict bouncing around within your Dan brain?
Oh, I always have conflict bouncing around my Dan brain.
Okay.
I'm going to take the points in this game, and I'm going to take the points because I don't trust anybody. And so I can get 2 outcomes taking the points. I can get Florida winning or Florida losing close, and you can only get, 1 outcome with Georgia winning big. Yeah.
Do you think Florida's good enough to win this game, though?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. I think Georgia's slow starts, especially away from home, I think a Georgia offense that has been good but not great, but has not been good early, but also hasn't faced quarterbacks who could take advantage, right? Like Spencer Rattler looked very good, but he couldn't take advantage for 4 quarters because Georgia was able to adjust against a South Carolina offensive line that was garbage in that matchup over the course of those 4 quarters. So, yes, I think Florida is good enough to win this game because I think they're competent in enough areas to take advantage of a team missing its best players and is just not used to playing 4 good quarters against a quality team. I don't think Florida is amazing. I don't think Florida is especially amazing away from Gainesville. But in this specific matchup, in a rivalry game with a quarterback in Graham Mertz, who hasn't been going downfield a ton, but has been accurate enough and has been clean enough and avoiding picks enough that I think Florida is a more complete team than what they've faced thus far. They blew out Kentucky in their Georgia did, in their most complete matchup of the season. And a lot of that had to do with finally getting plays off downfield. I just don't think Florida is going to, I think Florida will give a couple up, but I don't think Florida is going to be on that level because Kentucky had no offense. And so they were pairing up their defensive struggles with their own offense leaving the field quickly. Whereas I think Florida is run well enough that they're going to keep the Georgia offense enough off the field. This is also the first big game like this for Carson Beck in the cocktail party, whatever we want to call it, matchup. So I just think it's going to be back and forth. I think Georgia wins this game by a touchdown. I do. I think it's going to be like 30-23, something in there.
Yeah.
But I struggle to think about Georgia's offense with the inconsistencies early and they really haven't shown a lot in going downfield, especially without Brock Bowers.
Well, and that's the thing. I think there's maybe a bit of a speed bump because we've seen the Kentucky game. The Kentucky-Georgia game was a really good example of they let Carson Beck drop back and throw it right away to Brock Bowers. Kentucky had no answer for it.
Nobody does.
No, nobody does, but Kentucky especially.
Yeah.
Because I remember we previewed that game and it was like, well, if they come out and they run it, Kentucky can stop that. Kentucky could not stop Brock Bowers. Perhaps nobody can, and now nobody has to worry about it for a couple of weeks because he's out. And so I just wonder if it takes a little bit for this offense to get going and figure out what that new normal is. They've got dudes. It's not like they don't have guys to play, but we just have not seen that yet. And this is a big number, right?
It is.
That's all to say. This is a really big number. 14.5 is a big number in a game without your best offensive threat. I agree with you. Actually, I think that Georgia comes out winning this game, but they don't have the normal firepower because Brock Bowers is out. He was such a matchup disadvantage that could pull defenses out of shape. Florida does not have to worry about that now, which is good for them. They will also be fired up and focused for this matchup. And I should also add that Georgia is one of the worst teams in the country against the spread.
Also true.
They're covering about 20% of the time. So I think it's something like 28-17. I think it's lower scoring. And within 14.5, I tend to agree with you.
Third down is going to be huge. I mean, third down is normally huge just because, I mean, first of all, you want teams that acquire first downs on first and second down. But Florida on third down, their offense has not been good, whereas Georgia's defense on third down in third down moments has been excellent. But Florida's own defense has been great on third downs, and Georgia's offense has been good on third downs. And so there's a potential mismatch when Florida has the ball, but Florida might be able to make up for it as their own third down defense has been pretty great this year. And so I think Florida's like top 30 in yardage per drive allowed. So what do you have as a final?
Well, I have 28-17 as my final.
28-17?
Yeah.
I like it.
Georgia. Final big dog. We sparred a little bit over this one, what our final big dog was going to be. I selected Oklahoma, Kansas.
Yes,
We'll
you did.
talk about Ohio State and Wisconsin next as part of the next segment, I promise you. But I settled for Oklahoma at Kansas because I thought the situation was more interesting. So this game is earlier. This game is 12 o'clock on Fox. Oklahoma is a 10-point road favorite at Kansas. I am intrigued by Kansas. I remain intrigued by Kansas. I did the deep dive on the Jayhawks over on our Patreon a couple weeks ago. And my conclusion was basically Kansas does not have a shutdown defense. We didn't expect them to.
Right.
They've got a below average defense, but they are marginally better than they were a year ago. And there are some things that they do really well. They don't give up big pass plays. They've been very good at preventing those so far this season. They've been significantly better at creating pressure. That is not to say that they've got like Chase Young on the line. Okay. This is not a world-class pass rush, but it is not Kansas class from years past. It is better. And because they're putting some pressure on opposing quarterbacks, that led to a spike in havoc rate, right? Defensive plays that changed the game, be it pass breakups, forced fumbles, tackles for loss, that type of thing. They are much, much better this year at doing it. So up something like 120 spots compared to where they were a year ago. They need a lot of them in a game like this if they actually want to win the game. But I think it's interesting because Kansas gets this game at home. I think it's interesting because Oklahoma had a scare last week. I think it's interesting because Oklahoma may have a bit of a look-ahead spot given the fact that the Bedlam game is next week on the road in Stillwater. So I look at this and I say possible hangover effect, possible look-ahead effect. I know you don't think much of Kansas. I know you've been dismissive of Kansas when I've picked them in other spots, so I suspect I know which way you are going here.
Right.
But I think Oklahoma wins this game and Kansas barely covers.
Like
I think
in a
it's
shootout kind of thing?
38-29 is my pick.
38-29.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's get a niner in there.
Yeah, you're not wrong about the letdown look ahead. UCF last week, Bedlam on the road, by the way, so it's 2 straight road games for Oklahoma. Okay, a couple things. This is going to be a Jason Bean game, I believe. Jalen Daniels still healing. Jason Bean is dug into the numbers, Ty.
Mm-hmm.
Real bad in the fourth quarter. So if you are pitching me on sort of a back and forth within reach kind of matchup, that's a worrisome element of this. That, Kansas within 6 with 11 minutes left. Spice up. There's a pick 6, right? I don't think it's a sure thing, but it's something I'm paying attention to because I like quarterbacks who get stronger over the course of a game and, are clutch in those moments. And we've seen Kansas have opportunities late this year and not be able to close, whereas Oklahoma has closed quite nicely. The way they finished out the Texas game, of course, the way they finished out UCF. Say what you will, only beating them by 1. I think I would like Kansas a little more here if Oklahoma's run defense was suspect, but they've actually been pretty strong against the run this year. Kansas at its best is a team that runs super well. We saw
That's
that.
right.
I think it was against UCF, but it might have been a UCF team without John Rice Plumlee, if memory serves.
It is a running offense.
It's
It is
a running
offense, and it is not an offense that goes particularly fast. So
Right.
they need to be efficient, otherwise the whole thing breaks down.
Yes. So for that reason, I think I'm not just going to think I am. I'm taking Oklahoma to win this by 13 or 14 points, by 2 scores, relatively late, but I think they have a strong fourth quarter and finish strong because ultimately I think their team speed on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
I still feel sunken about Oregon not landing Peyton Bowen, who has been absolutely incredible all over the field for this Oklahoma defense, and I think they're going to be able to make plays on both sides of the ball. Oklahoma here, 34-21, 37-23. Let's call it.
37-23. Look at
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Peyton Bowen's been nails so
Yep.
far this year. He's been really good. And
As is Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel's
been really good.
Yeah.
Oklahoma. I don't mean to undersell Oklahoma. Oklahoma's been obviously very good, and they've been better than I expected. So good on them. They've just burnt me so many times on the freaking
know.
road. I can't do it again.
I
just
hear ya.
can't do it. So we disagree here on the last pick. As you are watching all these big dogs, make sure you give us a holler at 855-VERBAL-3. That's the reverb line. We are, of course, building towards our Week 9 campfire, which is our
Are we building? We're building? We're building toward that week 9 campfire, getting that lumber, getting those logs. All right.
That's right.
That's it. Yeah.
Home Depot, not a sponsor. Could
Not a
be.
sponsor.
Yeah. 855-Verbal-3, we will play your voice messages as part of that episode. The next segment we call the Quad Fathers.
Think about the heart, the passion, the love, the commitment, and the energy you're willing to put into it.
Such a ridiculous sound.
Yeah.
Thomas Platts, known more effectively as the Quad Father from back in the 70s,
Okay.
had 30-inch quads. We're not doing that, thankfully. We did have USA Powerlifting reach out to us. This is true. A coach reached out to us, Justin.
Really?
A longtime listener. And he said, by the way, don't do the Quad Father workout. You will be crippled. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
all good.
You want to give yourself some rhabdo? Yeah.
Not, all good. We're not going there with this. Instead, Quad Fathers, at least in our sense, means if you've got any number of various unnamed streaming providers, all of which aren't sponsors but could be, probably wouldn't want to be on the show.
Right.
They let you pick 4 games to watch at once.
So we're selecting our quad. We're selecting our solid verbal quad, the 4 headliners from the various windows.
The 4 headliners from the various windows. The big window this week is at night.
Disorder! Sorry, continue. It's Halloween weekend.
There's no reason for you
I
to
can't
play
have
that.
some surge in there?
There's no reason for you to play that right there.
I know. I scared at least 14 people right there.
Scared me.
I
I
know.
didn't even know it was coming. Night window, I think, is the big one for me. Not just like Halloween weekend in college football, but with respect to games, there are some biggies here. The big one, I think, in the night slot at 7:30 on NBC is Ohio State at Wisconsin. So it's a big point spread. Ohio State's favored by 14.5 on the road, but obviously this is a game that is of particular interest to a pretty big chunk of our fan base. We have a lot of Ohio State and Wisconsin people that listen. Tanner Mordecai went down. Braden Locke came in and led a comeback effort against Illinois. He was the Big Ten Freshman of the Week last week. He's a redshirt freshman, the transfer from Mississippi State, I want to say.
Sounds right.
I watched him last week. I thought he looked calm. I thought he gave them a spark. It was also pretty freaking windy in that game, so it wasn't the easiest of passing conditions for him. So I don't read too deeply into the 50% or whatever completion percentage. Letdown spot for Ohio State after the Penn State win last week. They're on the road. They're at night. It's Camp Randall against a good defense.
Chilly. Should be about 40 degrees, 38 degrees. Yep.
Chilly. So this is the game that I think we want to pick, that we want to focus our attention on. The other games in our dream quad here at night, even though the time isn't exactly such that it pairs up, there's the 10:30 block with Oregon State at Arizona. There is the 7 o'clock game on ESPN between Tennessee and Kentucky. And then I picked as the final game in the quad, and maybe we could argue about this one, ESPN 2, 8 p.m. at Cincinnati at Oklahoma State.
Do you know what my thoughts are? Do you know what my thoughts are on Cincinnati? What do you say, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State?
Cincinnati, Oklahoma State. Yeah, Oklahoma State favored by 7.5.
No! Okay, that's my full thought. Sorry. I should be banned. I should have my soundboard taken away. Okay, let's start with the quad. Yes?
Give me the quad. Give me the Ohio State Wisconsin pick.
I'm taking Ohio State, and I kind of hate it. I kind of hate it because it's on the road, and Wisconsin's defense has been solid, if not pretty good, most of the year. It's been a weird season for Wisconsin, and now having to sort of answer for an offense without its quarterback, its starting quarterback. I'm not in on Braden Locke like I think you are, or at least hope to be this year.
Okay, whoa. Let's not say I'm in on Braden Locke. I saw him one game against a bad team.
Yeah, I saw him a couple weeks ago. Didn't do much for me. Yeah.
So
I still think it's a nice matchup because Ohio State has really struggled both with injuries and actually running the ball. Injuries to running backs. We've seen, Trey Henderson, Mayan Williams, Chip Traynham, Dallin Hayden. All these guys have been, beat up this year to different extents. And I think that's where you can get Wisconsin on the ground a little bit more because I think they've been pretty good against the pass. They don't have a huge pass rush this year. I think they eventually will with Luke Fickell. But I am cautiously optimistic that Ohio State through the air, I think it might have the feel of like the Maryland game, like in
I can
the
see that.
combination of an opportunistic, speedy defense getting healthier, locking down in the second half, and maybe a couple of shot plays that go really nicely for Ohio State, I have them winning by 20.
I'm still laughing at that sound.
I don't have any more surge.
I'm still laughing at the no. That's I don't know where you find
So
these.
that's my pick. I'm taking Ohio State to win by 3 touchdowns-ish.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is I don't think Wisconsin's that good.
Yeah.
I'll be
No, the
plain about
defense,
it.
I think the defense is getting it done. They're like 15th nationally in points per drive allowed this year.
The defense is fine.
Yeah.
Ohio State's the better team. Braden Locke is not beating the Buckeyes. So for me, it's a question of if they can score on Ohio. Can they get to 17 points on Ohio State? Can they get to 17? Can they hold Ohio State under 30? Because if that's the case, then I think we're talking about a cover here. That's the question. I'm going to take the points because feels like hostile road environment at night. I don't know what state Ohio State's going to be in given they had the big win last week. It's maybe a bit of a hangover from that. I don't know. But just seems like a lot of points on the road at night in a hostile environment against a good defense. So I'm going to go points.
And this year, by the way, Ohio State on the road, if we're talking about offensive output against quality teams, Ohio State on the road this year was the sort of disappointing 23-3 win over Indiana, 17-14 against Notre Dame, and what they were good against Purdue. And so they really haven't shown much against a quality team in terms of finding a groove and a rhythm on offense on the road this year. Could happen this week, but they just haven't shown it.
I think the 10:30 ESPN game, the Pac-12 After Dark game between Oregon State and Arizona is going to be a banger.
That looks great.
Arizona is my home dog of the week.
The Yakos, home dog of the week.
They are 86% against the spread. They're a good team with a potent offense. It's got a backup quarterback in Noah Fafita, who I think is going to play. He's got a hot hand right now. You got a ranked team coming to Tucson at night. Halloween weekend, Dan. I mean, how else could we stack this against Oregon State? They could play it under a ladder. Would that make it any worse? I don't know. It just seems like everything is stacked against Oregon State. I grabbed this point spread, to be clear, at 5.5 earlier in the week. There's been a lot of action on this one. At time of recording, it's 3.5, but I've seen it as low as 3. So a lot of people, I think, have the same idea.
I have Arizona. You don't have to play the sound again unless you truly want to, but I have Arizona as the home dog of the week too. And it's especially interesting, picante to me, because Tucson home to a lot of great Sonoran hot dogs. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but remember I used to pick the hot dog place to go to for our home dogs?
Yeah.
Sonoran dogs, you're talking like bacon and guacamole and beans and all sorts, carne asada. It's mayo, salsa verde. Like, they just make it's a party. It's a fiesta on a hot dog. So I'm sticking with that theme too here. I like Arizona as well. And it's mostly because I think Oregon State, the numbers are a little bit inflated. We talked about this on our Bonus Thursday Verballers.com show, that I think their defensive numbers are a little bit inflated given the offenses or the lack thereof they've played this year. And Arizona's balance on offense and emerging threat on defense, to me, I don't know. There's just weird things happen in Tucson at night. I'm going with Arizona to win outright here. I just think it's a tough opponent in a tough place to play in a tough spot. So I'm going Cats here. I really do like Oregon State overall. Their ability to run the ball, the best of DJU, can be quite dangerous. I just don't think they have the defense to match. So I have Arizona winning this 37-34.
I've got Tennessee beating Kentucky outright in our third game of this quad.
Oh, I've got a sound for that because it's Tennessee-Kentucky week, right?
It is Tennessee-Kentucky week. That's right.
Tennessee, Kentucky.
Yeah, Big Earn.
Big Ernie McCracken. Once again.
Yeah.
Tennessee, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Great fake commercial.
Tennessee's favored by 3.5 on the road at Kentucky. A lot of folks taking Kentucky here. I estimate there's about a 93% chance that this game is unwatchable. But it's interesting. It's a good
in our
matchup.
quad.
It's a good matchup. That's why we put it in the quad. We don't want to be willfully ignorant to the biggest games of this particular window, and so that's why we put it in our dream quad. Again, you can watch 4 games at once. These are the 4 that we'd watch. Aboard this here Underthink Express.
Please.
If I'm underthinking this, I don't think Kentucky's very good. They've lost their last 3 games against top 30 caliber opponents, or I should say they haven't lost their last 3 games.
I mean, they're 5-2. It's really tough.
They're 5-2, but they're 5-2. But of the last 3 games that they have played against top 30 opponents, they beat Florida. That game was in Lexington. They got hammered by Georgia and Mizzou, and those games were uncompetitive.
Right.
It legit was not even close. So I think it benefits Tennessee that you can beat Kentucky if you can throw the ball. We saw that in the Georgia game. Saw that in the Mizzou game. Tennessee is not as good as last year, but I still think they win outright and cover. So I got Tennessee on the road here.
You really underthought it, huh?
Yeah.
I don't like Tennessee at all. Okay.
Right.
Kentucky still has one of the best running backs in the conference, in Ray Davis. How soon you forget the disrespect.
Ray.
So we're talking about Tennessee in a letdown moment after a winnable Alabama game slipped away. Kentucky with a good defense coming off of a bye at home as an underdog. With a running back who, at their best, I mean, he's a home run hitter more than he is, like, give it to him 30 times and he'll pound out. He's not like a Benny Snell type in that way. Remember Benny Snell? He was great.
Of course. I gotta forget Benny Snell.
Just dragging dudes.
Yeah.
So I have Kentucky winning an ugly affair here, 20-17.
Okay.
I think they can win this one with that combination of factors.
Final game in the quad. You said no to it, so I'll just give you my analysis. I am infatuated with Oklahoma State after writing them off for dead in May.
Yeah, this is your mea culpa.
This is literally my mea culpa. 8 o'clock ESPN2, Oklahoma State, 7.5 points, the favorite at home against Cincinnati. So Cincy beat Pitt in week 2, and everybody was like, Cincinnati, watch out for Cincinnati. Then they lost 5 straight.
Yeah.
And if you look now, they're projected to lose 10 straight. So I stand by what I said last week. I think Cincy's the worst team in the Big 12. They just are. I am a little bit worried about the look-ahead factor here for Oklahoma State, but it feels like these are 2 teams going in opposite directions right now. I also think it's probably your last best chance to bet on Oklahoma State because
interesting.
The Pokes have Oklahoma at home next week. That line's going to be artificially low, especially if they win this game. If they win this game, they're 6-2 going into that one. They've got a ton of steam. I think especially in that case, they'll be a home dog, and people are going to want to take Oklahoma State. So favored by 7.5 here. Wouldn't surprise me if it came down a little bit before kickoff. I would go Oklahoma State. I feel pretty confident about Oklahoma State in this spot.
Yeah, I like it as well. The fact that it's at home, the fact that Cincinnati has, I mean, that was a Phil Jurkovec like mess of an offense week.
That's right.
And Pitt has actually been a little bit better in protecting Christian Veilleux.
Yeah.
And they've gotten the ball out quicker. I think Oklahoma State is just better. Oklahoma State has gotten its act together. I don't know if I buy them as a 10-2 team this year. I know I don't. But I think they can be a little bit scrappy as long as Alan Bowman is kept upright and the offensive line looks as good as it's been. And look, I don't think Cincinnati's stopping the run, and Oklahoma State has one of the best 2 or 3 running backs in the Big 12 in Ollie Gordon. So, yeah, give me the Pokes here.
That is our dream quad in the nightcap. I give you 10 seconds to rattle off any games that I missed.
In the nightcap?
Yeah.
Okay, I like Washington big against Stanford. I like Arizona State to finally win one of these close games in the desert against Wazoo at night. Well, it's in the evening. It's not fully at night, but 5 Pacific. Wazoo favored on the road. I think ASU can rush the passer well enough. I like North Carolina big against Georgia Tech. I think Omarion Hampton should be able to eat
10 seconds. Hurry up.
Georgia Tech defense. Air Force big because of the defense at Colorado State. Ole Miss big against Vandy. And James Madison behind the strength of a very good defense, covering 17.5-ish against ODU.
That was good. It was
Thank
way
you.
over 10, but I'll give it.
It's okay. Come on.
It's okay.
You want me to play this next time? I can do that. That really jumpstarts me.
A sound heavy episode here.
Good luck editing this bad boy.
Yeah, this will be great.
Yeah.
In the afternoon window, we have a separate quad. So unfortunately, some of the streaming providers, they dictate what quads you have to watch. We are picking the ones we want to watch. The 4 games in this quad are Duke at Louisville, Pitt at Notre Dame, BYU at Texas, and Wyoming at Boise State.
Okay.
The Duke-Louisville game is a battle between 2 ranked teams, Dan. And Louisville's favored by 4 at home. It's on ESPN 3:30. Riley Leonard day-to-day. We'll wait and see on that front. When we last saw our heroes at Louisville, they lost to Pitt and crawled in a hole for a week after the Notre Dame win.
Yeah.
That was a really, really unexpected loss and not a good one at that. I think they're refocused here at home, and Duke hasn't really been on the road that much this year.
No.
They were on the road last week against Florida State. They held it together for a while until Florida State pulled away. But 5 of their 7 games so far have been at home. One of those road games was UConn, so it kind of doesn't count. I think the Cardinals win this game. I think they cover this game. I think there's a chance they win this game that they are, feeling 10-2.
Oh, man.
I like Louisville.
I like Louisville as well here just because of the questions at quarterback. I think Duke's defense will be good enough to basically shut down Louisville's offense for a large chunk of this game.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if the Duke offense is leaving the field like it started doing when Riley Leonard got hurt last week against Florida State, I think Louisville can cover this game. Win by 6, something, 24-18, somewhere in that vicinity. By the way, Duke not playing a lot away from home. Do you know how many games North Carolina has played outside of the state of North Carolina?
Are they
how many
pulling a
true
Florida?
road games?
Are they pulling a Florida?
They played South Carolina in Charlotte, right? So it was neutral against South Carolina, neutral-ish. They played at Pitt, and that's it.
Wow.
We're going into week 9. They've played in one opposing team stadium.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That's it.
I included Pitt, Notre Dame in here. Notre Dame's favored by about 3 touchdowns, 20.5 points. This is an annual mess of a game, Dan.
Yes,
it's
it
an
is.
annual. Now, it's not annual. I guess the last time they played was 2020. Notre Dame won that game by 6 touchdowns, 45-3. So that one wasn't close. But if you count way back, the last 9 matchups, 7 of them have been one-score affairs. It feels to me, we've done shows about this. You know where I stand on this game. It is always close, even when it doesn't make sense. Pitt, Patner, they find a way.
And it's a look-ahead spot for Notre Dame, right? Clemson next week on the road?
Whatever. I'm not even worried about that. I'm not even thinking about that.
Well, some people might be.
This game is one of 2 things, and it's always true. It's either a blowout in the first quarter, and you know it's over right away, a flash fry, as we've called it, or it's a 10-point game late, 3-point game late. Pitt's okay against the run. If we've seen anything from Notre Dame, it's that it's going to take them 3 quarters to figure that out. It'll take them 3 quarters to figure out what do we do next if the other team's good against the run. So I take the points here. Notre Dame wins, but I take the points. It's just the Pitt game. You got to take the points.
Oh, I struggled with it, but yeah, I think Pitt's been a little bit better. They still rush the passer. I know you voiced your concerns about the Notre Dame offensive line. I'm going to take the points as well. To me, it's Notre Dame has earned it on a certain level. They just haven't earned it lately against teams to have a spread like this. So I'm going to take the points, but I don't really think it's going to be in doubt.
Give me your read on BYU at Texas, 3:30 ABC. Texas favored by 17.5.
I'm taking Texas here, but it's sort of a wing and a prayer that Malik Murphy is able to continue what Texas has been able to do during the air, because BYU through the air, BYU has not been good against the pass this year. I think they've given up a bunch of big plays, and so I think it's going to be a sound victory for Texas, maybe to the point where after the game people say, man, should Malik Murphy? This might also be Malik Murphy's audition to transfer to a huge place in the offseason.
I jotted it down. Florida, Auburn, maybe Oregon, definitely Notre Dame, Cal. I think Cal will probably make a call. They won't
he's
get
from
him.
the West Coast. He's from Southern California, I want to say.
Ingleside, California.
Yeah.
I think this is a tour de force for Malik Murphy. Texas is my lock of the week.
Wow.
Lock of the week.
Because look, BYU's not scoring on this defense. And I don't like Malik Murphy getting the start is, as you said, kind of the early audition. It is his opportunity to go out there and showcase what he's got. He knows that his options will probably be somewhat limited this year, so I think he's going to show out. And frankly, he is a monster. He is a monster.
Quinn Ewers could also just go pro after this year, and it could be Malik Murphy, but Arch Manning is sitting there lurking as well.
I think Malik Murphy is gone. If he is worth it at all, he's gone. He's going elsewhere because they're going to want to give that to Arch Manning.
Okay.
They're just going to have to. But I'm pretty excited to see what this kid can do. We talked about him in the spring game, and he just is a freak, a monster. 6'5". Here, actually, I'm not going to include this as a fantasy thing.
Wasn't asked to throw it in relief last week, really, against Houston. But yeah.
No, he was 1 of 2, had a short completion. My fantasy thing that I'm not going to include in the fantasy thing segment at the end is your over-under is the opening monologue the opening monologue for Dave Pasch and Dusty Dvorak to compare Malik Murphy to Vince Young.
Okay.
Right away, right out of the chute, because he is just a monster.
Do you think if I set the over-under at 1.5, number of times they post the picture during the broadcast of the quarterback room at Texas with their shirts off?
Yeah.
So it was like Arch and Quinn Ewers, Malik Murphy. And Malik Murphy was a man amongst boys.
Yeah. A god among insects if you're into the Avengers and not the Avengers, the X-Men.
Okay. Yeah. 1.5. I think they might show it a couple times. They'll definitely show it early.
I would go under. They're not going to show it more than once, but they definitely have to show it once. We agree on Texas. I have Wyoming, Boise, final game in this quad. 5:30 FS2. Boise at home, favored by 5, Dan.
I don't know why. Boise's railing. Give me Wyoming here on the road.
Yeah, I'm on Boise. I like Ashton Ginty for the Broncos. Even though Boise is kind of a mess on defense. They're 3-4.
They're one of the worst defenses in America, considering who their coach is, considering where they were last year. Wyoming can get some bigger plays. Oh, they can stop the run well enough. So I think they're going to be in a good place against this Boise rushing attack.
I'm on Boise here. You're on Wyoming. This is one of the lines that you see it and it's like, maybe somebody knows something. Maybe somebody knows something.
By the way, totally misread it. Wyoming has not been good against the run. I still like them to win this game.
Okay, fair enough. All right, 30 seconds. Give me a rant on the teams that we did not include in this quad. This is actually this afternoon block that we're discussing.
Yeah.
The afternoon block is loaded with games. You don't want to miss this one. There are so many games here. We needed 2 quads, I think, to cover everything, but them's the rules. What do you got?
I have Auburn against a Mississippi State that obviously has been beat up on offense. I think they cover that. I don't know why Miami has earned 18 points against a resurgent Virginia.
19.5 now. It's up to
19.5. I'm taking the Hoos there, both in letdown spots after Miami's win against Clemson and Virginia's against North Carolina. I'm going to take the points there. NC State's defense has been pretty good. I'm not sure why Clemson is a double-digit favorite anywhere at this point, so I'm going with NC State there. Iowa State against Baylor. I'm just going to take Iowa State. The best thing in that game.
Iowa State. Yeah, the line moved, by the way.
Yeah.
Baylor was originally favored. Now it's Iowa State minus 2.5 on the road.
Yeah, I still like Iowa State here to win by 4 or 5 points. Iowa State has been one of the surest things against the spread and not against the spread, taking the under these past few years. Iowa State has performed taking the under. I like Michigan State against Minnesota. What has Minnesota done to earn those 7 points? They're giving them. Minnesota is. So I'm going to take Michigan State here. I think they can be competitive enough, and I think too many people are looking at the Michigan game where Michigan may have just had every single call Michigan State had. I have Nebraska minus 3 against Purdue. Picking against Purdue seems to be quite profitable this year.
And Nebraska's won 4 or 5 or something?
Yeah, they're winning. That's not pretty, but they're winning with Harburg. And I have Rice. I'm going to take the points here in a shootout against Tulane. Give me JT Daniels and Luke McCaffrey at home. They're clearly much better at home, which is also where they beat Houston, so I think they win in a shootout.
And our final quad, we go all the way back in time to the early window, Dan.
Yes.
The early window. Actually, I want to play the sound.
You have to achieve failure. You have to take it that far.
I agree.
Nobody wants to go that far. It's too scary.
That is from the Quad Fathers motivational video out on YouTube.
Can we get like a specific training regimen from this guy, Justin, at USA Powerlifting?
I can ask him.
Like, can
He's
we push our
listening.
limits?
Can we push our limits?
Like, do you want the biggest traps in college football podcasting, Ty?
Well, we did call this Squattober.
It is Squattober.
And by the time we get the workout from USA Powerlifting, it might have to be Squatvember. I don't know if that's got the same ring to it.
It'll be Brovember. That's okay. We can still lift in Brovember.
I'm open to it.
But now, because it's Squattober, should we both be taking Glutaw to beat Oregon? I apologize. I am going to resign.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Continue.
There's only 6 games in this slot here that I highlighted. I guess 10 in total if you want to count Western versus Eastern Michigan or Tulsa SMU, games like that. But we have a relatively
dismissive.
Yeah, I am. It's fine. A relatively limited slate here in the early block. So our dream quad of early games is West Virginia UCF, South Carolina Texas A&M, Houston Kansas State, and Indiana at Penn State. I will actually start with Indiana at Penn State because you have a pretty strong lean here.
Lock of the week, Penn State.
Really? Wow.
Lock of the week.
Why?
Here's why.
Why?
Penn State has heard nothing but they have no offense, they have no juice, they have no electricity, they make bad decisions on offense, and they're going to take it all out on Indiana. That's what Penn State does, right? They lose to teams that are similarly talented or a little bit more talented, and then they just beat up on teams right after, right? They beat up on Maryland, they beat up on Michigan State, they beat up on all these teams because they have so much of an advantage. They're really good in these moments. They'll win this game 37-3, right? They'll do something like that. I just don't think they have that ability against good teams, but Indiana has one of the worst offenses in America. I think Penn State's defense will score. Penn State might score in all three phases. My final guess here is like 49-7 Penn State.
Yeah, I want to see if they can incorporate anything new downfield.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. Okay.
It does not matter. It's Indiana, Ty.
All right. I'll take Penn State. I am going to take UCF -7 at home against West Virginia. Now, UCF's lost 4 in a row, 2 of which they easily could have won against Oklahoma last week. Certainly the game they yacked away a couple weeks ago against Baylor. But I feel good about them here. I feel very confident in the over 59 because both teams have been giving up a lot of points. I just think this will be entertaining. Like it's less about who I care is going to win or who I think is going to win, and more about just entertainment factor in the early block. So that's why that's in this quad.
Yeah.
You agree with me on UCF? So
I agree with you on UCF. I think if Ollie Gordon can run, certainly UCF can run against West Virginia. Continue.
The South Carolina A&M game's interesting.
It's a big number.
A&M at home favored by 14. Jimbo says, quote, most everybody will be back from injury following the bye in week 8. So it sounds like Walter Nolan's okay. You remember he was carted off a few weeks ago. But Bryce Anderson, Edrin Cooper, Albert Regis, all these guys are hopefully coming back to help the defense. Now A&M off that bye. Like the issue for South Carolina is the lines. The lines aren't good. They haven't been good all year. And so I just think there is a decided schematic advantage, if you will, for A&M along the lines, especially their defense against South Carolina's offense. We know A&M's had their own offensive line issues this season, but I just don't have a really good reason to pick against A&M other than the fact that South Carolina can sometimes be a pain in the ass. So I'm on A&M minus the number here.
Well, I mean, you've recently posted videos saying A&M, it's time to fire their coach because he's been so bad.
But I don't think South Carolina's good.
I agree. So I'm going to take A&M here as well. I actually think A&M is going to be able to move it on the ground a lot. So it's second straight road game for South Carolina after not doing anything really against Mizzou. So, yeah, I think a healthy, rested A&M against South Carolina, back out on the road, I think it's a great opportunity to have a comfortable, like, 31-13 win.
And the final game in the quad, I've got Houston plus 17.5 over K-State.
Really?
Look ahead spot for K-State. They've got Texas. Texas on the road next week. I don't think Houston's good, but I think they can throw. I think they can keep this inside the number. 17.5 is a big number.
I think Kansas State big. My guy, Avery Johnson, is going to go off. So, yeah,
Okay.
Houston in a letdown spot after having that moment to take down Texas and failing. In like a double letdown spot, the big win 2 weeks ago on the Hail Mary against West Virginia. I like Kansas State here, especially on the ground against Houston.
14.5 seconds to go through any games we missed.
I like Wake Forest at home against Florida State. How about that?
Outright?
No, not outright. To lose by a couple touchdowns. So the spread is like 20 points.
Yeah.
I think a good defense at home. I think they can ugly this up. They beat them last year. They can kick a bunch of field goals. They're very good in the red zone to turn 7s into 3s. Give me Wake Forest to cover this game at home. Another kind of home dog for me. I like Maryland big against Northwestern, and I think that's sort of it in that window.
Okay. There's of course a late night game that we didn't call out, the UNLV Fresno game, which will be fun. Didn't make our
UNLV just keeps
conversation
winning.
earlier. Yeah, UNLV's having a good year so far this season.
Maeva.
I think though, are those all the games we have?
Yeah, except I have a very specific request for some big, stanky, dripping, heaving drum and fight.
I jumped the gun a little bit, Dan.
Uh-oh.
Got to play it again. Here we go. I cut you off. I apologize. We've got 12:30 ESPN Plus. This is a big one.
It's large.
The Yetis of Lafayette, the Leps going to multi-sport field squaring off against Georgetown. Leps 6-1, Georgetown 4-4. Who you got?
Well, this is technically taking out 2 quadrants in my early quad box, both for the standard broadcast and for the Pat McAfee sideline version of this
Is
one.
Pat McAfee working the Georgetown
Pat
game this week?
McAfee, and they're bringing back Adam Amin just for this game. They're going to be on the sideline for this one. I think it's Pat McAfee. It's Chris Fowler, I think, is heading to call this one. Like, it's a whole big production.
AJ Hawk will mime alongside Pat McAfee.
I have Lafayette big, even though it's at multi-sport field. Give me the Leps.
1 o'clock, Bucknell 2-5, Colgate 3-4.
Give me the Gators here. It's tough there, man. It's tough in Hamilton, New York.
I never picked the Nellies.
Yeah,
Gotta go Gators.
I know.
And finally, 1 p.m. ESPN Plus, Holy Cross at 4-3 on the road at Fordham. Fordham is a voluptuous 5-2.
Voluptuous 5-2. I'm taking Fordham here in the Boogie Down Bronx tie. When does Fordham play Lafayette? Because Lafayette's only loss is to Duke, right?
I think Lafayette already beat them, didn't they?
Oh, is that one of the losses?
There's
for
a little
Fordham?
bit of an ACC complex here at the Patriot League. We have no idea
November
who-
11th, Ty.
Oh, November
11:30 a.m. Fordham at Lafayette.
Should I go?
Yes, absolutely. You should go.
If there's no big window that week,
Well, it's
I'm gonna go.
11:30 Central. But yeah, it's 12:30 local
go.
time.
I'll go. All right, we got to close things out with 2 important bits of info.
Yeah.
Our friend Tim Buckley sends us the weather. The weather's at the end of every broadcast, right? So it's only fair that we would do it here.
Week 9 and feeling fine if you're in the South, that is. ACC, SEC, great weather for you. 70s and 80s. Good news for Georgia, Florida. It'll even be nice in Pennsylvania, folks. Hey, several season Saturday. That's right. It's winter-like with snow for the Montana Grizz. We also have 30s in Minnesota, maybe some sleet in Lincoln for Nebraska. And Dan, your Ducks might even be shivering their feathers. 40s in Salt Lake for kickoff. Great news on the West Coast. You're feeling spring-like. There's a little bit of everything for everybody across the college football world this week.
So, God, Tim Buckley, thank you for the
Yeah.
weather report, wherever you may be. Hopefully, you're not in a region of concern. Have a good week 9. We got one more thing left to do.
Ty versus the world.
Die Welt, le monde, el mundo, Sekai, Świat, Ty versus the world.
Presented by DraftKings Sportsbook.
They're still letting me give out picks, Dan.
That's because you're so charming and wonderful, Ty.
I am charming. I am wonderful, just not at making the picks.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 saucy bets, 1 themed parlay. You ready to go?
I'm ready.
Texas minus 17. You know where I stand on it. We actually agree on that.
Yeah.
Arizona, I like Arizona outright. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but take Arizona plus the number. I also like Penn State. I'll agree with you. Penn State minus whatever against Indiana. Situationally, doesn't really matter. Penn State will take care of business there. My themed parlay is a 3-selection parlay at about 4-1. Got to hit all 3 of these.
Okay.
The first is the Arizona money line over Oregon State. Arizona outright.
Okay.
The second is Arizona scoring more than 26.5 team points. If they're beating Oregon State, they're probably scoring more than 26.5 points. Agree?
Agree.
Agree. And the third and final leg of this is that the second half will be the highest scoring of the 2 halves. So one of those
Combined,
Pac-12 after dark games that we're doing the stream, and suddenly it goes friggin' haywire in the second half. That's the kind of game this is. We've seen it happen time and again. Second half, highest scoring half. Combine it together, about 4-1. I am calling it Catterday Night Live, Dan.
I like it.
Catterday Night Live. That is my bet. Again, Texas, Arizona, Penn State, and then the Catterday Night Live parlay.
Yeah. My only guarantee is sort of like a fantasy thing. I guarantee there is going to be weird Jim Harbaugh signs and costumes this Saturday. It's going to be great.
Oh, man.
Look
That's
out
so
for it.
good. That's so good. Football is more fun when you are in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Sign up with the code SOLID. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL with code SOLID. Dan, the crown is yours.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that fantasy thing. The deep cut for me this week is I like the NBC broadcast. I think they do a good job with the studio show. I think it's got the right vibe. They obviously got Nicole involved with that, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The actual game broadcast, though, is a little dry. And I think they're trying to find ways to spice it up and give it more personality. And so with Noah Eagle and with Todd Blackledge being in Madison, Wisconsin at night, my deep cut is that they're going to show Todd Blackledge in a callback to Taste of the Town.
Oh, Mickey's Dairy Bar? Is that where?
They're going to show him eating somehow, whether it's like in the booth eating a brat or going out on the town and eating somewhere. Like I think that's the deep cut. They're going to try to make that happen.
I think my easiest call with the NBC broadcast is Matt Castle is going to have the most plaid suit on set.
So much plaid.
Lots of plaid. Yeah, that's it.
So much plaid. Thank you to one and all for downloading the podcast. Thank you to one and all for supporting what we do here. Going out to verballers.com. Get in on the Pick'em game. Make sure you hit subscribe, follow, rate, and review the show if you like what we do here. 855-VERBAL3 is how you can reach out. Give us a holler. We'll play those messages on our Saturday Night Recap show when we do the campfire, Dan.
Yeah.
For that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt. As always, stay solid.
Peace.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See dkng.co/football for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.